We're live. Okay, so this is live now. Do you want to say anything to this? Do you want to go to the page and see if it works?
Yeah.
Is it working? Oh, okay. So we'll have to say something here. Hi guys, we're in Seattle. We're at Daniel Smith Art and Supplies store. I don't know if you can see me. We're doing this experiment with Facebook Live. If you're watching, stick around and you'll see us talk about our series of workshops here pretty soon. Here's Gail. So enjoy, type your comments down there, and also we'll try to answer them.
Starts at 11.
Well, it's I mean,
It's still happening, but
yeah,
I can't
it's,
see it. Am I supposed to sign in?
no. There it is. See, it is live. So can you maybe go outside and see if you can hear the noise?
It'll drag to.
Yeah.
Something might trip. So we're ready. What kind of charger?
Well, because the battery runs out.
Oh, I don't have a charger. Sorry.
Do you mind? I will go to
Yeah.
the car here.
We're gonna. How long is it? 2 minutes. Okay. I'll just start. Shut the door. Or not.
7 people are watching now.
Oh, really?
Dale.
7 people? Okay.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good.
Good seeing you. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, that's
Can you tell them?
He says there, stay. That number is
Right.
the people watching. So the people are from, the people are
okay.
I mean, you can say things like you're the first of like.
Okay, I think we're ready to start. Hi. Thanks for coming. This is pretty exciting for us. This is the kickoff of the 10 by 10 program through Urban Sketchers. How many of you are Urban Sketchers? Yay. How many haven't done it and want to learn about it? Good. Okay, well, I welcome you to this lecture. First, I wanted to thank Joseph, who's standing right there, and Tom from Daniel Smith for letting us have this lecture here. We appreciate the support that they give Urban Sketchers. I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Gail Long. I'm one of the instructors that will be giving a class here, and also I'm workshop coordinator for Urban Sketchers, and I've been doing that for a couple of years. So just a little background about Urban Sketchers. It is celebrating its 10th anniversary this year. Can you believe it? I can't believe it. But yeah, yay! So when we realized that it was the 10th anniversary, our education director, Mario Mijares, came up with this great idea of having 10 classes to celebrate the 10 years of urban sketching. And this would happen throughout the world. So this is only one of 26 courses that are happening throughout the world. And you can see the dots where the different classes are being given. And so each of these countries or cities are actually having their own 10 by 10 course. And it's, everybody's going to be doing it in a different way. So one thing is, if you're traveling this year, I would encourage you to look on the website and check out what classes are being taught in different parts of the world, because you could sign up for that and take a class and you get to know people in different parts of the world. That's the wonderful thing about this. Okay. Okay, so in Seattle, we're having 9 classes taught by 9 different instructors, as you can see, different ones that are listed here. And then the 10th one will be taught by 6 of the instructors, because they're the ones that could make it. And that will be a group reportage, and we'll talk a little bit more about this. So today is, the point of today's lecture is to introduce you to all of the classes and the instructors. And the instructors will talk a little bit about themselves and what they're teaching, and that'll give you an idea. If you haven't signed up already, it'll give you an idea of what the classes are about. We are pretty full already, but because we are full, we're going to potentially open up another set, another class. So each class has potential to have, 2 classes going on. So if you haven't signed up, don't worry, we're going to try to fit you in. Okay? So, let's see what I... So to start off, I'm going to hand this over to Gabby Campanario, who is our first instructor, and he's also known as the Seattle Sketcher. If you haven't seen his stuff on the Seattle Times, you should. And also, he is the father of Urban Sketcher. He's the one that started this whole thing. So I'm glad to hand this off to Gabby, and he can start off with his, maybe giving him background about urban sketching, and then talk about his class.
Hello everybody, how's everybody doing this Saturday?
Oops, you have to.
Oh. Okay, good. Here we go. Well, you can blame me for having this crazy idea that everybody should be out on the street drawing, you know, and calling themselves urban sketchers. 10 years ago is a little bit more than, 2006 is when I moved to Seattle, and urban sketching became an idea to me because I wanted to get to know Seattle. I didn't grow up here, and as an artist, I felt like picking up a sketchbook and starting to draw would be the best way to find a connection with my new city, with my new community. So, and also as someone who always since I was a kid enjoyed drawing, I really wanted to get back into having a daily habit of sketching and improving my skills, my drawing skills. So it just all happened to coincide with the rise of social media and the internet and blogs, and the ability for everybody to be able to see what other people were drawing on the places around the world. So when I started seeing other people who were doing the same thing I was doing in Seattle on the internet, I just reached out to them and started this Flickr group for urban sketching. And that's basically how it all started. I was very fascinated by seeing people drawing in Barcelona, which is my hometown in Spain, in Italy, in New York, in Buenos Aires. And seeing all those drawings for me was very inspiring, not only because I like drawings and I like to look at them, but because I was learning about those places from people who live there. As a journalist, I've always been interested in finding out what's going on in other places around the world, reading news stories, and to have that unique report from artists was really exciting to be able to see that. And then I thought, well, this is something I really want to do more of. I went to my editors at the newspaper, I pitched the idea of publishing my own drawings and observations about the city, and that's how my column in the newspaper started. And it all happened quite quickly that I also had the idea of starting a blog and inviting other sketchers around the world to tell their stories through drawings. And soon after that, and after meeting all these people, we decided to make urban sketches into a non-profit educational initiative that would make drawing accessible to as many people as possible through workshops and events. It's one thing to meet people on the web and see their avatars. It's another thing to meet people in person. And now 10 years since that, some of my best friends around the world are urban sketchers who I have drawn alongside with in Brazil, in Santo Domingo, in all the places where urban sketchers is doing events. Now thanks to Mario Linares in Lisbon, who is the education director, he has dreamed up this idea of 10 workshops about urban sketching that are happening this year in more than 25 cities around the world. It's really fascinating that in a world that sometimes feels so divided, we can all come together around drawing and feel and share something that is universal, that anybody can understand. Drawing, you don't even have to speak another language, you see, you understand, right? So that's my introduction to how urban sketches happen. And when I was invited to be part of the team of instructors, and I was thinking, well, what am I going to teach? I'm not a teacher per se, and I thought, well, urban sketching for me became something because I started drawing on a pocket sketchbook. And all these years, even though I've moved on to drawing bigger sketchbooks and bigger formats, my pocket sketchbook is just still my best friend, right? So this is the most current pocket sketchbook that I just filled up. This is a new one that I just started. And I thought, well, maybe I'll come up with a course about pocket urban sketching. What I like about pocket urban sketching? Then I thought it all comes down to 4 P's. Portability. A pocket sketchbook is like the easiest drawing tool you can have with you at all times. It just fits in your pocket. So at any given moment, you can just pull it out and start drawing. That's the first P, portability. The second P is productivity. If you really want to get started, seriously start drawing a lot, when you draw in a small format, you'll realize that you fill the pages much faster. So your productivity will increase. And the more you produce, the better you will become drawing. The third P is privacy. Urban sketching can be very intimidating, right? Because you're out on the street, people are seeing you, and sometimes you see these photos that we all share on the internet where we are out in the middle of the street sitting in our portable stool surrounded by watercolor, and then people are behind us and we're drawing. You know, it's like quite a performance, right? To be out there doing this, and you know that's like wow. You know, I'm not that kind of person. I'm very shy. So privacy. A pocket sketchbook allows you a more private experience drawing. You can just sit behind or lean behind a lamppost and do a quick drawing really fast. You can even be on the bus and take little notes on your pocket sketchbook. And the 4P that makes pocket urban sketches great for me is that it gives me pleasure. The payoff of spending just 15 minutes with my pocket sketchbook is great. I come away with a drawing that will help me remember that moment when I look at those sketchbooks later on. I don't, because I'm not creating a big artwork that's going to be framed on the wall, the satisfaction is almost instant. You spend half an hour back, you get your drawing and your experience documented for posterity. So, I think that's all I wanted to say, but I did have some slides here, and how do I show them?
You just push.
Oh, there it is.
Advanced.
There it is.
Yeah. Oh, you kind
Oh
of
yeah, I just jumped over.
Sorry, I didn't. Here, wait. Sorry.
Okay, great. So I just went through my pocket sketchbook to show you some of the examples of those precious moments I enjoy drawing in my little box. This is just being with my family at a pizza place in Everett. So again, when you're with family, also it's very hard to find time to draw, right? But while everybody's still eating their pizza or waiting for the check, you can always like quickly try to get that scene on paper, and always carry a little box of watercolors with me. If I have time, I may put the colors there. If not, I can put the colors later. And I can just make, for me, my pocket sketchbooks are also my visual journal, so I always try to date the scene and maybe write a caption that allows me to remember that. So I just click on this.
Yeah, it's a.
Oh yeah,
there's a light.
There's a light. The first snow of 2012. This is from 5 years ago on my street. Again, who wants to draw there when it's so cold, right? You don't want to spend so much time. You just want to do it fast. With a pocket sketchbook, you'll just be able to fill that page much faster. In my workshop, we'll talk a lot about how do you make something that is so wide fit in such a small space. That's always a challenge, right? But pocket urban sketching, one of the advantages of it is because the space is small, you really need to simplify the scene and condense it to just the most essential lines. That's a skill that when you move on to bigger formats, bigger pages, if you've developed that, you really, if you've practiced that, you'll be able to simplify the scenes and get the gist of the composition much easier.
Excuse me, could you repeat that? Because there's some people shopping, so I didn't hear what you said about the most important thing when it's small, then you could have to go bigger.
Right. One of the things I was saying is that in my workshop, we'll talk about how to make a scene that is very wide open in front of you fit in the smallest space. How to measure and know that you're not going to run out of space. And that's a skill that when you move on to draw bigger pieces of paper, if you are able to master it at this scale, it will come very handy.
Thank you.
This is another wide scene. I mean, this is Memorial Stadium at Seattle Center watching the women's soccer team, the Seattle Reigns. I mean, that's a big scene in front of you. You need to make sure that the first lines you start putting together are going to be small enough that the bigger lines, the bigger space is going to fit. And of course, you're always tempted to draw those players bigger than they really are, but from where you're sitting, they're just going to be a speck. They're going to be very small. I always, when I'm at a Mariners game or a sports game, sitting on the bleachers, I look at the guy, I always look at the guy in front of me and then look at the players, and the players are usually not even as high as their ears, you know. That's how small they are. One from my hometown, Barcelona, from my pocket sketchbook. Again, here you see I also managed to get my own hands there drawing the scene in that perspective at that tower. Obviously, you can choose to, when you're drawing in your book, you can choose to just, in that case, I could just draw the tower of the castle and zoom in there. But I have the tendency, this is just my personal way of going about drawing, I have the tendency that I always like to draw from a few feet to the very back. I have a harder time. Other sketchers are very good at this, like what you're drawing may be very, very far away, but they can just like zoom in and get it on the page. I have this tendency that I want to feel everything that is in front of me. And one from Seattle, from a few from last year in the summer. Construction. Again, the composition is something that when drawing in a small format is very important, so you can feel, so the height of the buildings, of the skyline worked all right. Like here, if I'm drawing this crane, I want to make sure that this very tip is still going to fit. And you see how I use, again, my pocket sketchbook as my journal. I'm taking too much time. I'm taking too much time, right? Yeah. It's already 11 minutes here. One from Spain, old Roman bridge in southwest Spain where my family is from. So you see, you can choose to do single scenes on an overspread, go over the full, and then I'll show you other samples later. This is one of the sculpture part. It's so simple, right? Again, how do you simplify the scene so in 5-10 minutes you get a drawing out of it? That, when drawing on a pocket sketchbook, is less intimidating. This is an example of using the sketchbook to record multiple vignettes of where you are. I went with the art class, middle school art class. At my kids' school, we went to a USk grocery store with our sketchbooks, and you know, we walked around for 45 minutes and we had to draw the grocery store. It was kind of a fun exercise, and the manager showed us around. We went inside the giant refrigerators. So these were just 45 minutes. So it's like, oh my gosh, there's so much happening in front of me. How am I going to get everything? The key is to do very little tiny drawings. You know, a pot of flowers. I went with a photographer. It was kind of a photo versus a sketching experience. The parent of another kid took his camera and he was taking photos of the watermelons outside. Then we went inside. I talked to the manager who was, they had brought out balloons because they thought the kids were in kindergarten, you know, they were middle schoolers, and they were there giving us balloons. So I put the balloons there, and I added the watercolor later, of course. I didn't have time to do this on the go. But that's the manager of the store. Here's when we are going inside the freezer. So this is very bare bones drawing with watermelons, cantaloupes. I wrote down the temperature inside the freezer, 33 degrees. This is one of the students also drawing on her sketchbook. We are again inside the freezer, and here we talked to the fish guy. So I was able to do a quick outline of him and the salmon that he was selling. So this is another approach to using your spread in your pocket sketchbook. Instead of one scene, you do little vignettes. Again, how do you fit big spaces in a smaller sketchbook? Here, I not only fit the giant Seattle Center Library once, but 4 times in one spread. You know? I went around to all the intersections, you know, like 5th and Spring, Spring and Fall, Fifth Avenue, and in my time schedule I was able to fit them all. And here I put the last is the Center of Wooden Boats, where we will have the last closing class. That is a fantastic place because there's so many scenes to take in on the boats, the water, the lake. It's just a fascinating place. So that's why I chose this last August sketchbook spread for my part of the presentation. So I think I'm done. Thank you.
The next instructor,
Could I just ask, Gabby, where is your class going to be?
Oh, it's going to be in the Amazon campus in the Denny Triangle. I'll give you the details of where we will meet. We will meet, yeah. So.
Thank you.
okay, thank you. So the next instructor is Stephanie Bauer.
How do I?
So you just touch it. Just touch it. Just once. Yep.
Oh, great.
Oh, wait. Did you want to? It's because you touched it twice. You have to touch it once. There's a lag time.
Delicate.
Yeah.
Well, first, my name is Stephanie Bauer. I'm a Seattle urban sketcher, and I am so honored to be part of this group of amazing sketchers and instructors. Seattle is a wealth of talent and ability, and thank you, Gail, and everybody who's participated in organizing this. Like Gabby, I sketch to learn about the things that I see, and for me, the focus, however, is architecture. And my workshop is called Good Bones, and it's a lot about starting a sketch. Yes, okay. My background is as an architect, but for many years I've worked as an architectural illustrator, and these are some of my drawings. I learned to draw in school, but I live in the world of perspective on a daily basis. And I really love teaching it because people are often terrified of perspective. It's intimidating, it's mathematical, it's complicated. And over the years, let's see if this goes, I've come up with a way to teach perspective that really simplifies the process into 3 very simple steps. Huh.
No.
No?
No?
Can't see
It's too
Stephanie.
dark? Okay.
Through Urban Sketchers, also I've had the opportunity to teach in some amazing places and visit amazing places. If I'm going to Paris, I literally just contact the Urban Sketchers group there, and you can meet up. You have kind of an instant community to share your sketching experiences with. And so this was from this summer in London. This is from a class that I teach online through craftsy.com. And this, thanks to Gabby for connecting me to his editor. I'm thoroughly honored to have done a book in the Urban Sketching Handbook series, and mine, of course, is called Understanding Perspective. So, the simple process that I'm going to teach in this workshop is really reducing perspective to 3 basic steps, 3 initial steps. And like Gabby fitting everything into a small sketchbook, we will also talk about how to shrink a big scene onto a pretty small piece of paper. And this is how I start the process. I'll encourage you to reduce what you see, to edit out what you see to very simple shapes. I will start a sketch. This was, wait till you see where this goes. But this, can you see the lines? They're very simple, basic lines. Then I will find the vanishing point, which I will tell you all about the workshop, and my eye level line, where the vanishing point lives. And so then I start to develop big shapes into more big shapes. Then I eventually develop a line drawing. So this was the line drawing, and now you can probably figure out where it is. It's Suzzalo Hall at UW, which was actually a very comfortable place to sit and sketch. And then this was the finished piece. So I really love sketching architecture, and that's my background. And part of what's so fantastic about sketching is it makes you look really closely and really absorb what you're seeing in a way that snapping a photo never could. So the workshop will be at King Street Station, downtown in Soto, sort of, not quite Soto, but in the International District. And I wanted to show you how this is the initial shape that I would start with. I'll talk about how to do this. Reduce what you see to simple shapes. Step 1. Step 2, find your vanishing point. Step 3, put that eye level line in. And then that's the process. So here's my final image from King Street Station. I hope some of you will be taking my workshop, and I look forward to it very much. So thank you.
Thanks, Stephanie. So the next instructor is Steve Reddy.
Hi, welcome everybody. I'm Steve Reddy. For 20 years I've been teaching with Seattle Public Schools, but I'm semi-retired. I still substitute there because I like working with the kids and I like teaching. But now I'm teaching adults at the Gage Art Academy, and I have some online classes. A little bit of background, I've been sketching since I was in middle school, and I have hundreds of filled sketchbooks, but until social media and Urban Sketchers came along, I didn't really have a venue for sharing all of this work. And so it's been really great to not only join in with the Urban Sketchers, but Artist Journal Workshop and Everyday Matters. There are several drawing organizations that give you a venue for sharing this. And one thing about me, I'm a bit of a contrarian. When I see the crowd going this way, I tend to want to go that way. It's maybe not the most mature approach, but I hope that what I do as an urban sketcher kind of complements and supports what other urban sketchers do, where they tend to take a broad view, and you see lots of beautiful drawings of panoramas and cityscapes and broad vistas. I tend to focus on the small things within arm's reach. I'm kind of the macro view, micro view as opposed to the macro view, because my recording for me is very personal. It's about what's happening to me in my daily life, and so very often the things I choose to draw are the things that are much closer. And like, here's an example. We went to Swanson's nursery, filled with beautiful plants and trees and flowers, and I go park by the garbage dump and draw the cans and the trash. The other thing that's a little bit contrary to a lot of urban sketchers work, well, you'll see very beautiful, colorful, gestural perspective of drawings. I'm very linear in my approach. I think it comes from growing up with Saturday morning cartoons and reading comics. I'm very into line. And so the other thing, I'm very specific about trying to capture exactly what I see in front of me. So rather than gesturing in, oh, there was a bunch of leaves over here, so I'm going to do a broad swatch, which some people are really capable at, I tend to think, oh boy, a tree, I got to draw every single leaf. And so you can see that I have drawn quite a few of the specific leaves. But because of that, I tend to focus on more man-made geometrical shapes, signs of human activity as opposed to natural landscapes. So here's a couple of examples. This was after lunch in Dio's restaurant on 65th. I looked up and I just saw all of this detail, and I wanted to capture it. So again, I hope that this supports and complements what Stephanie does with her emphasis on perspective. I kind of just forego that and let it appear how it's going to appear. Because I'm drawing in ink with very little pencil drawing in the foreground, I don't have an opportunity to erase, so I have to start with whatever's closest to me and then just work my way back. Each object that I draw then becomes a reference for everything else in the drawing. Kind of what Gabby was saying about looking at the man in the foreground and seeing that the ear was about the size of the players in the distance. I'm doing the same thing here. I draw whatever's closest to me and then use that as a rough guide for how things diminish in distance. But you can see it's very wonky. My lines are not in perspective. There's a lot of disproportionate things happening. But that's my perception. Allowing that to happen kind of shows the viewer what was important to you. Where did your focus go? What drew your attention in the drawing? So even though I'm very linear, I'm very line-based, I do sometimes go in with a very diluted India ink wash to provide some differentiation, especially foreground objects. Dark things come forward, and so if I want to give my image a framing device or show the foreground is different than the background, I'll try to emphasize some of these foreground objects especially with some shade. And that's just regular India ink diluted with water and applied with a brush. One thing that I do, because if you're looking at a very detailed scene, it can be overwhelming if you look at all that detail. So I try to keep these 4 basic geometric solids in mind, and no matter what I'm drawing, I try to simplify it in my mind to one of these shapes. For instance, here's the espresso room at Cafe Appassionato, and you can see here's the cone, you see lots of cylinders, rectangular shapes down here, and that just helps me not get overwhelmed by the detail. Simplifies, here's my light side, here's my shadow side, and then I can approach it without being so overwhelmed. Again, starting in the foreground and then working my way towards the background. So I'm going to take you through really quickly one example. So talk about things that are in arm's reach. Here are my dishes drying in the drainer next to the sink. And so I'll just show you really briefly the steps. Very, very loose pencil. I don't even want to call it a drawing because I'm not trying to draw the objects. I'm just telling myself where things are going to go. And then this is where the bulk of the effort lies. It's in this very carefully observed contour drawing. And this is the skeleton of the drawing. And then I'll do my ink wash, several different layers. The first one is just to isolate the highlights. I want to make sure I've got some shiny spots and some nice whites for contrast. And then the second two, I just right over the top of the first layer, start darkening some of those shadows to show the recesses and the concavities. And then at the very end, it might be difficult to see from back there, I just use the Uniball pen to put some hatch lines in to accentuate some of those concavities and to bump up the contrast a little bit. I don't want to take too much time going into that now, but we'll cover those very specific steps in the class. One of the advantages or disadvantages, depends on your approach, when you're drawing on location, people are moving. I'm a very slow artist. A lot of urban sketchers like Gabby can just stand, whip out a beautiful drawing in 10 minutes and move on and get several drawings done in one sitting. When I meet with the urban sketchers, I usually take the whole 2.5 hours to draw one drawing because I'm trying to be very careful and capture all of the specific details. Now this looks really weird over here. It's because it was the front wheel of a baby carriage, a 3-wheel baby carriage. And the mother was moving it around to keep the baby entertained. So by the time I got from one side of the wheel to the other, it was in a different place. I just drew what I saw. That's what I did. And then she left. There's this poor little abandoned unicycle thing. But in a way, that's a more accurate representation of what happened during those 2 hours that I was sitting there, rather than trying to pretend that I got it all drawn while she was there. So I'm not bothered by those little artifacts or anomalies. So speaking of drawing people, because I'm not doing a very detailed pencil drawing, this is the same person, my long-suffering girlfriend who's in the back there. She looks very different in every drawing because I'm not doing a very careful pencil study. What really attracts me to the setting, though, is all of this geometry around. And again, it might look very intimidating at first, but if you're thinking only in terms of those 4 geometric solids, it kind of gives you a handle, start in the foreground, work your way back. By the way, if you were to compare this drawing to a photograph of what was there, they're not even close. There was probably twice as much medical equipment hanging back here, so sometimes there might be a whole piece of furniture that I realized, oh, I didn't leave enough room for it. Leave it out. Who cares? Who's going to know the difference? And if it didn't catch my attention, this is a better accurate representation of what was important to me or what I saw in the setting. The style is also lens that you can draw anywhere. Here in the back seat of an SUV driving through Joshua Tree Park in California, very bumpy, unpaved road. This visor is a perfect rectangle. This wobbly line is because that's what's happening as a drawing. But because the whole drawing is done in that style, in my mind at least, it gels and it coheres and it looks like I meant to do that, even though I'm doing my best to draw what I see. And in this case, I just did a solid wash over the whole thing to show that I'm inside a car, it's much darker, and then outside, because as your retina or your pupil adjusts to look outside, you've got that bright light coming in. So I left out the detail in the background to show that it was a very sunny day outside. That's my cousin Charles driving. Another thing about this technique, the materials are very simple. Here's a day with the Urban Sketchers downtown Pioneer Square. Forgot my sketchbook. All I had was my line writing journal with really thin, unabsorbent paper. I was still able to capture pretty satisfactorily for me all of the detail in the coffee shop there where we were sitting. This is another day where I had a sketchbook like Abby showed you, a really small one, horizontal. It was really raining hard outside, and so I tried to capture how the water on my windshield distorted what I was looking. So you get all these kind of lightning bolt distortions on the cars and things like that. But I just use a regular Uniball pen. It's waterproof, and the nice thing about that is when you put your watercolor on top or your washes, they stay fast. It's really important that the pen you use for this technique is waterproof. And that's it. So looking forward to all the meet at the White Place Market Atrium.
Thanks, Steve. Nope, that was your last slide.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, there's one more. So, Urban Sketchers met at the Stimson Green Mansion, beautiful historically preserved building. But again, thinking, where's the most clutter, where's the most geometry? Well, everybody's drawing this beautiful architecture. I'm in the bathroom drawing the bathroom pictures.
Okay, thank you, Steve. The next person, instructor we have is Sue Heston.
Okay, hi. Sue Heston. I've been drawing with the Urban Sketchers since about 2012, but I've been following them online for quite a bit longer. And what really struck me in the first few presentations here, and what really got me interested in the Urban Sketchers in the first place, is that there's so many different approaches, so many different styles. There we go. So many different backgrounds. Everybody comes to Urban Sketchers from somewhere else, and it's, it's just a group that I've learned so much from, and I hope I have something to offer back to it. I started with this. Obviously, it's not an urban sketch, and it's not even a drawing, it's a block print. My background's in printmaking, and it has had a big influence on the way I draw. Learning how to carve an image into a block of wood really taught me to simplify my images, to look for the really important silhouette in whatever I'm looking at. And it also taught me that the white of the paper, what you don't cover with ink, is as important sometimes as the space that you do cover with ink. Okay, now we're down to a drawing. This drawing is done under the highway overpass in Georgetown on an urban sketching outing a couple years ago, and it pretty much represents all the things I love about drawing. Big shapes, dark shadows, the little spaces of sky under the bridge. Those are all the things I look for. I love drawing alleys. I like the spaces between buildings. I love power lines because they carve up the space in all these interesting shapes. And for me, that's what I'm always looking for. I love drawing people, but the approach is the same. I think you can see it's that fascinating silhouette to me, right? Against these girls sitting in front of a bright window. This drawing took maybe 20 minutes. The one before I spent most of 2 hours on. But the approach is the same. I'm starting with the big silhouette. And if I get that shape right, let's see, make sure I'm on track here. If I get that big silhouette shape right, I feel like then I can spend as much time as I have on a drawing. All the details will start to work if I've got the big shape nailed to start with. Okay, and it's not media specific. So I'm throwing this one up there, which is a quick drawing that I did just with ordinary pen and ink. But again, starting with the big shape that's most important to me, which is the tents in this farmer's market, once I got those where I wanted them, all the little people, the produce, the stalls, that all fits in. For me, if I start with a big shape and work to the details, that's my approach. Yes, and if you happen to be sitting there someplace where your subject isn't going anywhere for a couple of hours, you can just keep going and building from that first initial shape, filling in details, texture, depth, more and more darker values. But really, this drawing started out the same way that the farmer's market sketch did. Yes, okay, so my workshop is going to be held at the downtown ferry terminal in the walk-on passengers waiting area, which if you haven't ever walked down to the ferry, to one of the ferries from downtown, it's a great space to be drawing in on a cold and rainy March day, which is usually what we get in March. So this actually was not from from the ferry terminal. This one I did down there. But we're going to be using grayscale markers in my workshop for about the first couple of hours. I'm going to be giving a couple of exercises and talking about different types of shapes to be looking for to start structuring your drawing. And we're using markers because I feel like they will let people draw quickly, and also they somewhat inhibit you from diving into the detail part of a drawing too soon. It'll also give you a chance to hopefully get somewhere between 6 and 8 different small sketches done. And then in the last hour or 45 minutes of the class, what I really want you to do is have a chance to apply this way of seeing. Because really, I'm not teaching you a certain media. I'm not teaching you a certain drawing technique. I want to be teaching you a certain way to see. I want to have you have a chance to apply that to using your own media, your own normal sketchbook, your own normal sketching tools, and spend 45 minutes or so doing your own kind of drawing, but using these building blocks of starting with the big shapes and working to the detail. And I just have one last, hopefully, yeah. One more, different media. I'm very fickle about media. I don't have a favorite. I have lots of favorites. So colored pencil, a little bit of gouache, and pen and ink on a toned paper. But it's still the same basic approach. The first thing I drew on this was not the boots, but the trees in the background. Once I got the trees in the background, that defined the shape of the boots, and I could go in and spend the rest of my drawing session working on details. But it all fit because I'd already worried about getting the big shapes drawn accurately. So, I think that's it for me.
So Anita Lehman is the next instructor.
So this program is genius, you guys. I mean, I'm sitting here and I've learned so much just in 4 instructors. If you can sign up for all 10 of them, I highly recommend, because you're going to know how to draw at the end of things. Some of the things that, the aspects of urban sketcher, I also teach drawing and I teach art, and I'm an artist as well. The power of being on site and using all your senses, so that when you go back to the studio, you felt it. You felt it from to your heart, and you know it. You know how cold it was. You know how busy it was. You know how noisy it was, and you've lived it. If you've ever done a drawing from a photograph where you've never been, like if I did a drawing of the Acropolis, I've never been to the Acropolis. It'll be okay. But if I do a drawing of the Pantheon where I have been, holy cow, it's full of so much information, and beyond just the descriptive aspect about its space. It's also about the evocative, how the wind was, the smells, the people that came up and talked. And that's the aspect that I see as the strength of Urban Sketcher, besides just learning how to draw, the importance of your response to the space. I have handouts on supply lists for my session, so I've just taken all my time up just talking about that. But thanks to Urban Sketcher and Gail from putting all this together. And mine's with charcoal media, not different than what Sue was talking about, the importance of shape, the importance of seeing in shape. And what the charcoal media does is gives you a cut to the chase kind of aspect of learning how to draw. The same class can be done in soft graphite. It doesn't have to be charcoal, but on the list I have baby wipes because usually it's all over my face. By the time I finish, I call it workshop face because it's like somehow and my husband will go, you know, it's all over your face. And I'm like, yeah, I know that. So, the just touch it. Okay. So you'll see this view in a different aspects, but again, this is a charcoal medium. So the ability to either get very detailed or not very detailed at all, like Sue was talking about, in terms of thinking like drawing with woodblock, thinking about simple shapes. Delay. So this was a photograph I took last year. This is on I-90, and the urban sketcher from Montreal, his name is Mark Holmes, he talks about not having any more than 5 to 7 shapes in your drawing. And because he's French, he calls it 5 ou 7, which means 5 to 7, which means happy hour. I'm stealing it from Mark. But the idea of a drawing should have a happy hour, okay? And that's just a wonderful thing to cut to the chase, and if you have more than that, you have to ask yourself why you have that many. So we have the sky shape, and the cloud shape maybe is 2, 3, the mountain here is 4, the trees are 5, 6, and 7. Bingo. You're in like good company, right? You're in happy hours. So the aspect of thinking in shape, which you've heard now from everybody, because as artists, we're shape makers. Okay, I come from an architecture background. Architects are shape makers. They make beautiful shapes. So maybe some of these shapes I might manipulate to make them even more beautiful, more sensual, more evocative. So whether it's Richard Diebenkorn or thinking in terms of the positive and negative shapes like Sue was talking about, this happens to be a drawing of Ed Hopper. I saw it when I was in Rome last fall. And just the simplification of a scene, but with basic shapes in terms of describing the space itself. So, and then within my own, there's a delay. Within my own work, this is work that I've done since I got back from Italy. But the notion of thinking simply in form and shape with not a lot of detail. And of course, color has a whole bunch of power that goes with it. So there's another view. This one was a recent winner for a K-Rock delineation, and you can see how detailed one can get. There's the architect in me, right? They can get that detailed. Though I much prefer doing a drawing in a couple minutes or 20 minutes, then this one probably took a little bit longer in terms of time. Okay. So this is where the field trip is going to be in Ballard. Salmon Bay has definitely changed since I sketched it back in 1987, but when I look at a scene like this, this is one of those scenes that, you know, Gary was saying, there's so much, how do we simplify, or how do we make this this design or illustration successful within one's sketchbook, excuse me. So what I do is I sort of walk around and photograph and get a sense of the space before I even sit down, and sort of decide, this is the one I ended up deciding on, and the notion of a shape and a background shape and a sky shape. So that complicated thing, it can also be the garbage cans that Steve was talking about. It doesn't have to be the big views all the time. And so as I'm walking around, I'll start doing vertical. We're going to be talking about composition, vertical, horizontal. Your iPhone or your Samsung, whatever, is useful tools for framing, thinking about negative space, positive space, and you can see how, these are graphite studies, but you can see how simplified the drawing forms are. So composition is one aspect. And then also thinking about foreground, middle ground, and background. So what the charcoal does is just lets me get, I don't even have to draw a lot of detail. I can just be thinking of bigger shapes. So having a knowledge of perspective is great, but you don't have to know perspective to draw like this, because all you're doing is paying attention to the shapes or the negative shapes that exist. So we'll be doing those kinds of studies. And here's the detail, taking the drawing a little further. How far do you take it in terms of the notion of description? And here's one more where the middle ground is a little bit more of an emphasis compared to you can see where the darkness, like Steve was talking about, where you put a darker shape in the foreground. Here I'm focusing more in on the middle ground. And the eraser ends up being a tool as well, dealing with some of the negative and some of the smoke that exists within the viewpoint itself. So between manipulating the tool and thinking about composition, looking at bigger shapes, I'm hoping by the end of our 3-hour session together that we'll have some pretty interesting simplified drawings, and you'll be able to look at a space in such a way where it's not this, I can't draw anything. Yes, you can. You'll be surprised how much you know. So thank you, Gail, and I'll put the supply list in the back for people if they're interested.
Okay, so the next instructor is David Chamness.
Hi, I'm David Chamness. I'm an urban sketcher, and you know, Gabby talked about how he had this idea and started it. Well, there's been a bunch of us that had this idea a long time ago, but just didn't know how to codify it. So thank you for codifying and getting this together. But I've been doing this for about 35 years, and just doing it by myself, and didn't know there was a group out there. There's a community of people doing it too. I'm an architect, and the reason I started doing this was that I wanted to see my environment and see how things were changing. So that's how I started, and kind of on my own. And then I saw a display of urban sketchers and connected up with them, and it's been fun to be part of the group. I wanted to do my workshop at a construction site downtown, just because things have been changing so much in the downtown. I use my sketching to really see and remember. I think a lot of people have really talked about that in their workshops, that those are important things. But as an architect, I'm always trying to understand how, you know, especially buildings go together and how the spaces are formed. So I like to draw, to think, and to remember and to understand. So when I did this of the Amazon biospheres downtown, I went back quite a few times and drew these buildings. I was trying to understand the buildings, trying to understand the process, but I wasn't trying to be perfect. And that's a big part of my class, is not worrying about the details, but allowing the drawing to just flow, to allow the drawing to just, you know, not worry about any mistakes. There's no mistakes in this drawing, but it is all mistakes, you know, in a sense, you know, because it's not perfect, and it's not trying to be perfect. So I really like this quote from Yogi Berra, because it says, "We observe a lot by watching," and that's kind of is the essence of what I like to think about it too. Is that when we're looking at things, if we're really looking at things, we understand them much better when we try to draw them. When you take a photograph, it's a quick understanding of it, but you don't really understand it. But when you try to draw it, you begin to really understand it. And there's a number of older architects, and I'm kind of in that realm where we always learned about, you know, we use drawing to think and to design. And so again, I think that what we're doing is a real understanding of our environment. Also, another thing about sketching that fits into things that I like is talking about the ings of things that have ing at the end. And those are there's a lot of things in your life what you observe and participate in that have that at the end. And kind of the last few things kind of summarize, you know, drawing and sketching. In the workshop, the main thing about this is having fun. To me, drawing is not about this agony of trying to get a drawing out. It's about going and enjoying the moment, sometimes having food, a drink while you're doing it, being in a wonderful place. You have to enjoy what you're going to draw. If it's going to be a burden to you, don't draw it. Don't, you know, because this is all about having fun. You know, being in a restaurant, I was in a restaurant having a great meal. I decided to draw, and I only had my pen and my little sketchbook, but there was gravy in the plate, and I used that for a little brown down there. And there was beet juice. There was beet juice on the plate, so I took that with my finger and kind of wiped it on there. So, you know, you just improvise and you just have fun. It's also about, you know, it's a very individual and kind of private thing that you're doing, because you're representing what you're seeing, not what somebody else is seeing. So it's very much your experience, but you're in a public place, so you have to kind of get over the, you know, someone coming over and looking over your shoulder, and enjoy the moment of having an interaction with them, because they'll ask questions, they'll want to know what you're doing. You know, sometimes when I'm right at the beginning of a drawing, it doesn't look like much, but, you know, so come back in half an hour, come back in 20 minutes, and it will look like something. Now it doesn't look like much, but that's okay. You know, people are, you know, I was having people come around and just see what I was doing, so that's great. My workshop is going to be, I'm actually going to have people work on bigger pieces of paper, because I want people to draw with their arms, not with their fingers. I don't want to get into the little detail where you're doing little tiny moves. I want to do bolder, fast strokes. Both these drawings, well, this drawing was done in about 15 minutes. This one took about an hour and a half, but there's aspects of it that were very fast. Like this whole part of the new Amazon headquarters, I just took, there's not much lines there, but I took my watercolors and I did some bold strokes, and while it was wet I added more, and it all kind of bled together, and it made for a really good sketch, I think. The other one was, I didn't have much time, my wife and my daughter were like, come on, we gotta go. So I was like, okay, what is the essence? And it's almost like you get into a zone where you're not really thinking about what you're drawing. You're just, again, I think everyone has kind of talked about, profiles and shapes and trying to look at just, maybe squint your eyes and see what the dark and the light shapes are in the space. And then these sketches, these were actually all done in like 5 minutes because I had time limits. But just trying to capture the essence of it, and we're going to use watercolors because I find that with watercolors you can capture aspects of your sketch and kind of fill in the details of some of the warmth, the sunshine, or the coolness of the day. There's some aspect that you can capture very quickly. My wife and I took a road trip, and so while she was driving, I wasn't driving and sketching, but I had my sketchbook, and I wasn't thinking that these were precious, and I never think of them as precious, but in the end they do become precious because they're memories. But I'm not worried about so much the lines, but we were driving down I-5 and came across Mount Shasta, and I started drawing it, and I said, you gotta pull over give me 30 seconds, And so she pulled over, and I stepped out of the car, and I finished this drawing really fast. I didn't put watercolor in it at that time. I did that after we had driven off, but to get the main kind of aspects of it, or I was waiting for a ferry here, and it was coming, and so I only had a few minutes. So that's what I want to do in this class is have the ability to do things fairly quick and capture the moment, capture the feeling. This one was, again, driving on that same trip, but we were going down this valley, and I literally had about 30 seconds, and it kept moving, and so everything kept changing. It was kind of like Stephen was saying that you're drawing something, and all of a sudden the next thing changes, and you have to just kind of let it flow. So we're going to have fun in the class. We're going to enjoy our time. We're going to be loose. We're going to, we'll probably start with some smaller sketches, but at the end, I want us all to do one more that's a little bit bigger, and that you get as much down on paper in that time as you can. I know a lot of people like to look and then draw slowly. This is going to be, we're going to try to look and constantly draw while we're looking. Yeah?
Those quick 5 minutes, like where you made your wife pull off the road and stuff, how big are those? They're about 8 by 8 sizes. I tend to try to work, in the 8 by 10 size. Yeah, a lot of these were out of the same sketchbook that I was running with. It was about 5 by 5, 6 by 6. So we're gonna work fast. We're gonna use color and ink. I'll allow people to use pencils for like the first 30 seconds of a drawing, but after that, put the pencils down and go into ink, because then you can't go back. You just have to go forward. And the best thing about it for me is that I remember events, and being able to sketch at things, it takes you back to that moment, that feeling. I went to the Sounders rally down at the Seattle Center, and standing in the crowd, I used my little pocket sketchbook like Abby had, because I was feeling a little bit self-conscious, but I captured the moment, and it's something I'll remember, and that's the biggest thing for me, is just going back to these moments in my sketchbook and remembering them and stuff. So I'm hoping that I have a couple of different construction sites that I have planned, and I'm hoping there's a site where the old Greyhound bus terminal is. It's a pretty big site, so it has a lot of different cool pieces to it, and there's There's a actual bus stop at a couple of different places. And I'm hoping it's not going to be a rainy day, but that's kind of where I'm planning to go. So I think that's it. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. Well, Suhita is our next instructor, and she'll be teaching class 7, which is capturing chaos, drawing a crowd. Now, I'm going to be talking about Suhita because she's a guest instructor from California. Suhita is one of our beloved correspondents on the main Urban Sketcher blog. And if you ever go there, you can see her work. It's fabulous. She has taught at the symposiums and taught in the Bay Area. She's a graphic designer and an illustrator from San Jose. She's originally from India and graduated with an MFA in communication design from Pratt in New York. She loves to draw everything, but particularly loves capturing busy, energy-filled scenes. What Suhita loves most about sketching is that it's a way for her to look closely at her world, her everyday surroundings, as well as the new and exotic, because she travels a lot. Sketching slows her down, makes her a deeper observer and recorder. And in looking closely and recording, even the everyday and mundane things become beautiful. With urban sketching, she gets the pleasure of sharing her world with a larger audience. I think I covered everything. So she will be teaching this workshop, and it'll be located at Pike Place Market. Her class currently is full, but we're taking wait list for a second session. And that will be, the second session will be on Sunday of that weekend at the same time, 9 to 12. So this is a sketch that Suhita did. So if you are, the workshop is about capturing people in a scene. If you're kind of overwhelmed by the scene, when there's too much happening, a lot going on, people all over the place, or if you generally don't know how to draw people, like a lot of architects don't know how to draw people, so this would be a good one for them. This would be a great workshop to go to. In this workshop, she will cover simple steps in capturing a scene and how to draw people. The first part of the workshop, you'll learn how to capture figures in gesture using the concept of line of action, starting with standing and sitting figures and then moving on to figures in motion. The second part of the workshop will give you a strategy to build a sketch. First by creating a structured underdrawing, then overlaying it with an unstructured loose drawing, then overlaying that with structured values to create depth and focus, and finally finishing it off with an additional layer of unstructured color. You can see how beautiful that is. It really pulls it all together. So, these are some other sketches that Suhita has done. The supplies for her workshop would be a medium-sized or larger sketchbook for the final watercolor piece, a book that you can use to do lots of pages of quick gestural figure drawings, graphite pencil, 1 or 2 different kinds of pens for mark making. She suggests fountain pen, Sharpie pen, brush pen, or anything, other kind of pens that you might like to use. A small watercolor kit and brush, and then a portable stool if you like to sit down and sketch. So that, again, that's going to happen, I think it was May the 6th, and we're going on to Michelle Cooper.
Can I add something to that?
Yeah.
So I had the great pleasure of getting to take Suhita's workshop in Singapore at the symposium. She's She's a fantastic teacher. I just wanted to add this because she's not here and able to talk for herself. And she's hysterically funny too. She's, and if you're fearful of drawing people, which I am, it's a great workshop to take because she simplifies it. Her technique really does use that gestural sketch, and she's absolutely, or that gestural line, and she's absolutely fearless. She will not draw a crowd from here and the crowd is over there. She walks right up to them and practically sits next to them to draw them. So if you're fearful of sketching people, or if you're just looking for a way to sort of get your toe into that water of sketching people, she's a fantastic teacher, and I would highly recommend it.
Thanks. Michelle?
Well, hello. I'm Michelle with one L, American spelling. I've had to explain that all my life. All right? And I have been teaching watercolor studio classes for quite a few decades now, since the early 1980s. And I've taken people on plein air watercolor trips in Europe, in Canada, and all over. So I love adventuring. I love engaging with people, the local people of the area, and getting to learn something about it. So urban sketching was the thing for me. The thing is I've been teaching for so long, I was looking for some people to go out sketching with where I wouldn't have to explain anything. And here I am today. But I have such a great time sketching with all of the different sketchers that you've just met here. They're wonderful, and we all kind of have the same ingredients, and then we put them together in a different way. So my workshop is about visual journaling and sketching a montage. It's always nice to use a French word in there if you can. It sounds so elegant, doesn't it? So what is a montage anyway? It's the technique of producing a composite whole from a collection of sketches, some text, and maybe even some ephemera. Like you might have collected a little logo on a napkin that looks pretty cool in your composition. So you can use that as part of your composition in sketching. Let me show you where we're going to be. We're going to be at the corner of Pike and Melrose. It's the mothership of Starbucks, and it's the Reserve Roastery, so there's plenty of things to do there. If you like to do street scenes, then look at all these street scene possibilities that you have. There's some interesting buildings on the outside, the roastery itself. This is a wedge-shaped building called the Six Arms, and it's created another wedge-shaped block of restaurants and markets that you can go to. And halfway down the block from here, just going this way, is the Melrose Market. So no matter what the weather does, you'll be comfortable. You can be outside and look at all these chairs everywhere that you can sit in. Pretend like you bought your coffee there. And take your time in sketching. So here is an example of one of my sketches. Oops. An example of one of my sketches that I did in that very location. This is where you're going to be to sketch. So it looks like a lot of stuff there, but all these things just happen one at a time, or else I notice them one at a time. And I've been doing this since I was a kid. I used to illustrate my letters to my grandmother, especially embarrassing things about my sister. So when she was late to the bus, and we all had to wait there, I pulled out a piece of my school paper and I drew a picture of her being late to the bus, and a kid next to me saying, "Get the lead out," which I thought was kind of a swear word maybe. And so if a picture is worth 1,000 words, imagine what you can do with words and pictures. You have other senses too. Some of us have mentioned this. In that experience, you hear things. You can smell the garlic in a restaurant down the street. There's all kinds of stuff that's happening. This is in a Stillman and Byrne sketchbook. The paper is really thick. It's their beta sketchbook, and so it's smooth enough for ink, but it's absorbent enough for watercolor. So I really, really like being able to do that. I love the classic-looking pale green Vespa that's parked right across the street by the Melrose Apartments. And while I was sketching there, all of a sudden I became aware of a person saying very loudly, "Hey, hey, you!" And I'm looking around. They said, "You in the pretty scarf. So I wore this for you today." And I'm looking around. Anybody else have a pretty scarf? Oh, I guess not. And then I find there's a woman